I think watching Salas and Vries today is definitely fun for the future. And I think Mike Schilt mentioned this is the time when they start their journeys, true journeys to the big league club, probably towards towards next year. I think one thing that stood out to me was DeVries is an athlete, and that kid can play some shortstop from the early jump of things. And I would say going forward, they need to do everything they possibly can to give him the tools to become the shortstop of the future. Like, don't move him, have him be the shortstop. They moved Jackson Merrill, they moved Fernando Tatis Jr. They're eventually going to move Xander Bogaerts. To me, it's like whenever this kid's ready, you just give him the reins and let him go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of you got to be careful with spring training. Not that he did anything. I mean, he made a play on the left side of the infield. He went 0-for-3. But
I was just saying he's an athlete, and he's really
I
athletic.
bet he is. I'm just saying, I'm not giving this kid the reins in 2026. Like, that's just off the top of my head. That's what I would say, right? Like, how could he possibly be your shortstop in 2026? I don't care what he does in 2025. He's 18.
No, yeah, I agree.
So I'm with you on that. It's just, I'm just always very cautious with a player of that age. I mean, Merrill is a great example of someone that broke through despite being a 20-year-old, and he was 21 a month into the season. I mean, that's incredible. But in 2026, this time in 2026, DeVries will be 19.
Mm-hmm. So almost Tatis was 19 when he got brought up.
Yeah, I'm just always cautious when it comes to that young of a player. Maybe it's a possibility. I mean, maybe it's a possibility, but I mean, to be like an everyday player in 2026 to me seems a little bit, I don't know, but a little bit of wishful thinking is what I would say today. I mean, we'll see how it plays out over the next year. To me, it might be more like a 2027, 2028 when he's 20,
Well, I mean,
20 years old.
Tatis was 19 when he got brought up, and he was the everyday shortstop, and he shined from the jump. Now he got injured, but he showed, you knew he belonged right away.
Right.
Vries still has some time to have to prove those types of things. But if by next spring training, he puts together a comparable spring training to Tatis's 2019, then that's where I'm like, okay, give it to him, And I'm not afraid to give a spot of that importance to a 19-year-old kid because Tatis did it.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that a tough comp? Even I haven't looked at Tatis's minor league numbers and I know DeVries only had a year in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
There's no way. Again, maybe DeVries will do it this year, and maybe that'll make me change my opinion. I'm not sure, but I feel like Tatis was a pretty damn productive minor league player. I know he was hurt. I know he dealt with injuries in the minor leagues, but he was a very productive minor league hitter.
Yes,
and maybe DeVries will be. Maybe DeVries will be.
And I agree. DeVries is going to have to prove it. He's going to have to go out and earn it. It's not going to just be given to him. But I do think if he goes out and earns it, then it's okay, go ahead, man. He has the body, he has the build, he has the athleticism.
Yeah.
If he's making those plays at 18 right now, and his arm is whoa. I think if he continues to build off that, and he does show with the bat some promise, and he does make a leap, and by next year, if he's putting on a show in spring training, it's probably going to be very hard for this team to say, yeah, let's give him some more time in the minors.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. But to your point, he's going to have to. I mean, he's a long way from being the guy that's kind of pushed through and made the team, isn't he? From everything we know, from Schilt saying a day ago, I don't even know who this guy is. He's, this is his first big league camp. Let's just see what he's like. What's he like off the field? What's he like on the field? What are his demeanors like?
But don't you?
I don't even know how many plate appearances he's going to have this spring. He's going to get 30 plate appearances. I mean,
but don't you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't you, in the little that you've seen of him, not in spring training, but just overall, isn't the little you've seen of him where you can see that he might have it?
He has to have it. Yes, I agree. I mean, I think in low A, in the Cal League, he was really good. You always take it with a grain of salt because it's the Cal League and the ball flies. But yeah, I mean, everyone I think is a full believer in his tools and his skill set. I think there's no question about that.
Mhm.
But from tools and skill set to like
Yeah.
playoff contending team playing every day. But then again, Merrill did it. You're right. Tatis did it. They brought up Chris Paddock as a pitcher at a very young age when he
Yeah.
broke through in 2019. 2019, the expectations weren't exactly the same as they were once we got into the 2020s. Although at the time they kind of sold us on, hey, we don't want to not have Tatis and Paddock with us and then miss the postseason by 2 or 3 games. And that was
Yeah, they
the
had
rationale for
expectations.
bringing them up. To their credit, that was the rationale for having them. So no, I mean, I think, listen, if you hit on DeVries and Salas at any point, like forget about the timeline for a second, but if DeVries is like a 10-year starter for you, or Salas is a 10-year starter for you, I'm not as worried about the timeline. Like I say, fully develop the players, get it right, and then hopefully both of them contribute. I mean, they both have huge upsides. They're both going to be counted on. I mean, we've heard Eric Rupner talk this offseason, and like they're not going to go out and buy every single position on the diamond. So they need Salas and DeVries to hit. They've invested heavily in those two players internationally, and you know, I don't know when it's going to be, Jim. If it's 2026, incredible. But truthfully, if it's 2027 and they're ready, I'd prefer 2027 ready to 2026 and they're not ready. I would guess Salas would be beyond 2026, like not opening day 2026, because there's just so few catchers at his age in the major leagues.
Yeah, that was my next question is, well, I think there's a possibility of DeVries breaking camp with the team next year if he continues to develop and get better and goes out and
Yep.
proves it and takes that, right? I think there's a possibility.
Sure. Yep.
I still think, even though Salas had a, great double today and defensively everyone's like, oh, he's so ahead of everybody. I still think holding him back and making sure that he's not rushed into this would be the wise decision. And could be wrong. They could bring him up next year as well. And DeVries and Salas could break camp with the team next season and prove everybody wrong. But I think DeVries makes the big league club before Salas. What do you think?
I mean, I think he probably should, just based on position. They're the exact same age. I mean, I was just looking at, like, to your point, like how much seasoning does Salas have right now? He's had 759 plate appearances, but because of his position, you have to think about how much defense he's playing as well, because you're asking him to be the starting catcher.
Mhm.
But I mean, the adage would be 1,500 plate appearances in the minor leagues to get season. Now you could rush it when you've got a one-of-one player like a Tatis or maybe a DeVries or a Salas. Maybe they don't need 1,500 plate appearances. I have no clue how many Tatis had. It probably wasn't that many. He had
It was a
1,100.
lot.
He had
Tatis had a lot.
1,266. He had 1,266 plate appearances, Tatis, in the minor leagues.
So yeah, that's a good amount.
Over 500 more than Salas. And then you look at like DeVries, and DeVries to this point is 438. I mean, if Tatis was 1,200, DeVries is 2 years away from 1,200 because he's at 400. So 400 plus 400 plus 400, maybe a little quicker than that. But, he's second half.
But then look at how many at bats Jackson Merrill had.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I'll look right now. It's gonna be a low number. I'll look right now. It's a good point. I'll say it'll be 1,000. 881, which is a really low number, obviously. But again, and to their credit, maybe he's a special, unique, one every 10-year player in their system, because they haven't had anyone like him in the last 10 years that have come up.
No.
So that's a good point. I mean, listen, Salas, DeVries, one of them hopefully contributes in some meaningful way in 2026. Would you take that? One of them contributes in a meaningful way in 2026. Would you take that? I think most people would take that.
I think people would take that as well, but I don't think people should be expecting it. If that make I hope, and the Padres hope, but by no means should anybody just expect these guys to be with this team next year. They're going to have to go out and earn it. They're going to have to go out and take it. I think they can. I think DeVries can. I think Salas can. I just would be worried more about Salas than DeVries, to be honest with you. Like a lot more worried, just because histories of 18, 19, 20-year-old catchers, it takes a while. But the history with 19, 20-year-old shortstops, they pop pretty quick sometimes. Not really with 19, 20-year-old catchers.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a good point. I mean, we'll see. Here's the thing, like Omar puts, and thanks guys for hanging out. If you're here live or on replay, please subscribe here on content for you. We're a month out from opening day. Smash the like button for us. Subscribe. Follow us on X at John Schaefer at Jim Russell SD. We appreciate the super chats. Click the $ below the chat box. We'll get to all of your supers here tonight if you have a question or comment. But this from Omar, I mean, it's just interesting. So Tatis obviously hit for power in the minor leagues. I think the Vries has hit for a little bit of power in the minor leagues. Salas certainly is not. So, like, yeah, was Tatis a more advanced hitter at 18? I mean, Tatis is one of the best hitters in baseball. So, like, when you think about that, among the 30 teams, Tatis is one of the great raw hitters in the sport. So I don't know if that'll ever be Leo DeVries or Ethan Salas, certainly. But, yeah, I mean, Tatis was like I mean, you hate to use the term generational, but I mean, kind of is a generational hitter, isn't he? I mean, he hit 41 home runs as a 21-year-old, or 42 home runs, or whatever he hit.
I mean, Leo Dallas.
Yeah.
DeVries. Last year in the Cal League, it's the Cal League, you're right. He had 11 home runs in 75 games and 299 plate appearances, 22 doubles, 3 triples.
Yeah.
So he had what? 25 plus 11, 36. Yeah, 36 extra base hits. His average hit 237, but like he had a 361 on base.
Yeah, it's really good. Yep.
He's got an 802 OPS. So like you just expect those to get better. Like, what if this year he hits 18 home runs?
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know where he will start this year. Will he start in Peoria? Will he start in AA? I would start him in Single A. I'd start him, or excuse me, Peoria. Start him in Fort Wayne, right?
Yeah, probably.
Because Fort Wayne is now advanced A. I'd start him in Fort Wayne. If it works, bring him up to AA, not to the major leagues. But there's no need to rush it, is my point. If these guys are such pure, hitters and everything's going to go smoothly for them this year, that's great. Then let it come to them. It doesn't have to be forced. It's not like you have to be in AA to start the year or have to be in AAA to finish the year. Just put together a productive year. Don't rush it. You're right. They'll get chances in 2026 in spring training, in camp. Maybe one of them will have an opportunity to earn a job. Shoot, maybe both of them will have an opportunity to earn a job. But I would say this, Jim, if we get into 2026 and I'm hearing from Grupner or whoever the hell's running this team, John Seidler, hey, we think the Vries and Salas are both going to fight for starting jobs next year, I'd be like, that's telling me that you're not. I mean, okay, maybe that's good for the long term for the organization, but that doesn't scream like we're going to win 93 games and challenge in the postseason if you got 2 rookie starters among your position players in 2026. That's just how I see it right now. They'd be like 19 years old.
Yeah. But you also have to think too, after this season, John, they might be going through a little bit of a transition period. Unless they do go out and sign a bunch of free agents in free agency to a bunch of, but there might be a little bit of a transition period after this year because of what you're losing. Like another year older of Xander, who they don't want to play it short. You're going to lose 3 of your top players. And you are going to be going through some type of transition, whether they rebuild the team with free agents or they decide to build, have guys from within. Like eventually it will be a little bit of a transition.
It's fair. You're right. There will be. You're right. And a year from now, you're getting further removed from the true primes of Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts. Like now we can argue that point, and great players that might be on Hall of Fame tracks like Manny Machado can put off their, decline, right? Like great players can put off their decline to age 35, right? But Manny next year is 33, or maybe he turns 33 in July of this year. So he'll turn 34 in July of next year. I think that's right. So you're getting to a point where if you don't win now or soon, it's going to get a lot more challenging, because if you're asking a 36-year-old Manny Machado to have his career year, that doesn't seem overly likely to me. So, okay, he's going to be 33 this year. He could flat out produce. There's no question about it. He homered on the first pitch he saw this spring. I think it's a good omen. It's not a bad one. Him being healthy from an elbow is a good omen. It's not a bad one. But you're asking guys like Machado and Bogaerts, who if you just look at the statistical trend lines of 32, 33-year-old players that have played as much as they have, they're not likely to have their best year in the major leagues right now. It's possible, but I wouldn't call it likely that Manny Machado's career year or Xander Bogaerts' career year is right now. And I hope they prove me wrong.
I agree. And going off the point of, if you do go through a little bit of a transition next year and you might have to go a little younger, if those guys did hit, I mean, that's the dream scenario for the Padres, is that one of either DeVries or Salas really hits, and the other guy is just like a solid 10, 12, 15-year vet. Like, he's just like a solid guy that could play, every day, and he's never going to like be like a 10-time All-Star, but he might have one year where he's really good, but he's just like a solid guy for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other guy pops, and then you have Jackson Merrill. And if those three guys there are under team control, making no money, filling up 3 spots on your roster, but contributing, then it gives you so much more wiggle room to go out in free agency to spend when you have 3 key positions, center field, shortstop, and catcher, kind of like under control and not costing you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's their dream. Now, is that going to work out? I don't know. Who knows? The likelihood of that all clicking, not very high, but there's a likelihood. And so,
yeah,
those things happening is what they are banking on, because then it
And
will
when I
help
look-
the rest of the roster.
And if I look at it like this, and thank you, Ben, who says, like, let's say you didn't have a
Who?
rise next year. Let's say you didn't have a rise, and you had Cronenworth at first, Xander at second, Manny at third, and then you've got your young pup in Leo DeVries, right? Who's being, taken under the wings of Machado, Bogaerts, and Cronenworth. That's not that abnormal, truthfully, to have a bunch of 30-somethings and then this 19-year-old. You might be saying, like, well, does that make any sense? Well, it kind of does, because you got veterans to take a player under their wing and maybe help someone get through the trials and tribulations of a season. Where I think it gets a little tricky is if it's also involving Ethan Salas,
Right.
playing like 100 and something games. Now, I'm not saying starting a catcher 100 something games, but like playing at 100 something games next year for the Padres. It's just, to me, they're going to have like potentially 2 cores. You're going to have this, sub 22 core, and then like plus 33, years of age core. Like, I'm talking about like Darvish, Musgrove, Bogarts, Machado, Cronenworth. And I don't have all the ages in front of me, but it's just like they're gonna have these like young pups and then these like aging vets, and maybe that's normal too in baseball. It's just like I could be sold on DeVries being a part of a veteran infield. I think when you start putting Salas in there as well at the same time, I just think it's going to be hard to win at the same clip that they've been winning at, but we'll see about that. And also, here's the thing with Salas. Whether he has been DHing or catching in the minor leagues, he has not hit for any power. Now, I'm not saying that that's the indictment that he won't hit for power. He's only 18. I'm just saying that, like, even if he does contribute a year from now, I would never expect him to just all of a sudden blossom into his power right then. That's just how it looks to me based on what he's done so far in the minor leagues. Now, Merrill, again, wasn't the biggest power guy, and he certainly, you could argue, blossomed as a rookie. So we'll see. I think it's like, it's a little bit of a cautionary tale or a fool's gold proposition to say, well, Merrill did it or Tatis did it, so now DeVries is going to do it and Sal's going to do it. I hope they do, but one of them might not, is kind of the point.
No, I completely agree with you. I'm just going off of like what their vision is. Like, this is their vision, is these 2 players in the next 2 years being with the club and contributing.
Right.
And that's what they hope. That's the same thing with Jackson Merrill. Their vision for Jackson Merrill was contributing either right away or this year, and he contributed in a big way from year 1. And when DeVries does come up, you'll have, say he comes up next year, you'll have a 22-year-old in the outfield, and you'll have a 19-year-old at shortstop. 2 of the most key positions on the field.
Yeah.
Because Jackson just turned 21 last year.
Well, Jackson will turn 22 And
Okay,
so
this
he'll
year,
turn 23 next year in like April.
still 23. And
Yeah.
then you got Tatis, who will be what, 27?
He's 26 now. So I think that's
28?
right. I think next year will be 27.
27? Yeah. You know, coupled with an older Xander and a 34-year-old Manny,
Yeah.
you know, so like they have a vision and you see it, and they have the players that they're looking at to perform. And like, it's just about, can they do it? Can DeVries and Salas take that step this year to where we're going into spring training next season with these guys making legitimate runs at a roster spot on opening day next year?